Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. The beginning of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says, "There's an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven. A time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to shun embracing, a time to search and a time to give up as lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear apart and a time to sew together, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." So here the writer of Ecclesiastes is showing us that there is a season and a time for everything in our lives. And this is very beneficial for us for at least two reasons. For one, it shows us that the times that we live in, whatever time we might be in, is just temporary. The time to give birth is temporary, and the time to die is temporary. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted is temporary, and so on and so forth. It shows us that life is full of seasons, and these seasons come and go. And this is beneficial for us because it shows us that, for one, the good times are temporary. And that's important for us to understand. You know, probably all of us would wish that our whole lives were nothing but about giving birth and planting and healing and building up and laughing and dancing, gathering stones, embracing, so on and so forth. We would probably prefer for our whole lives to be about the positive things that are on this list. But it's important for us to understand that the good times are but a season. And that's helpful for us, not so that we can become discouraged or to become despondent in the fact that, the good times that we're enjoying will one day end. But it gives us a sober heart to know that we need to prepare for the evil days. We need to prepare for the bad days when we are experiencing the good times. In other words, we need to fill up our spiritual barns. That is, draw close to the Lord, keep practicing the spiritual disciplines during those good times, to work on spiritual maturity in the good times so that when the bad times do come, we will be prepared. Much like what Joseph did in the land of Egypt, where he had them, gather in all the food for the 7 years of plenty so that they'd be prepared for the drought that was coming. And the same thing is true with us. When we know the good times are temporary and are but a season, we can prepare for the bad times during the good times. But also it helps us in that during the bad times, we can save ourselves from despair to know that these are simply seasons of life as well. If we recognize them as just, this is a time for weeping, this is a time for perhaps the loss of a loved one, this is a season for having to tear down something, this is a less pleasant season in my life, but it's a temporary season. And if I can but wait out this temporary season, in all likelihood, there's good things around the corner. And to know that these seasons are just temporary. It's kind of like the weather. Right now, at least where I live, we're in a very hot time of the year, and it's probably going to get even hotter. And it's very difficult to go through the hot season of the year, but it becomes a little bit easier when you know that the hot season is temporary, and knowing that eventually you're going to get to milder temperatures further on in the year. And that's helpful to know that, yeah, it's hot now, but eventually we have the hope that the heat will subside and cooler weather will come. And the same thing is true with the seasons of our life as well. And so it helps us to know that the things that we experience, the times that we are in, are temporary and come and go like the waves crashing against the shoreline. And so it's helpful in that way. But it's also helpful, this list is, in helping us know that there's an appropriate way to respond to each of these times. That if we want to live a life of wisdom and a life of order, it's always appropriate to respond to the situation that we're in an appropriate way. That is, we need to be able to read the situations that we find ourselves in and to know how to respond. Those who are in a time where really weeping is appropriate, but they're laughing all the way through it, aren't really showing wisdom. Or a person in a season of dancing and they're mourning all the way through that dancing, perhaps shows that something isn't right, that something needs to be corrected, or maybe they need some help, maybe seek some counseling or something like that. But to know that each season has its appropriate response is important as well. That God has ordered our lives in such a way that there would be seasons, and that we need to know and to be aware of what season of life we're in and to respond in that appropriate way. I think sometimes we feel pressured to always be laughing, to always be joyful, even though we're in situations where we should be actually mourning and grieving. But then we can also fall into always being depressed and grieving and mourning when life is actually pretty good. And to know whether or not we're responding to the seasons of life appropriately can help us to know whether we need to seek help, whether we need to maybe readjust our thinking, maybe go back to God's word and recalibrate our thoughts and our minds in connection to various things. But to know that life is full of seasons helps us in a lot of ways. Again, it helps us to know that these seasons are temporary, and then that these seasons have an appropriate response, and that we need to respond to them in the appropriate way, and give them the type of activity that they are due. And so here's some things that we can reflect on and think about as we read Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.